Guys, it's Vandy Asshole, back again for another Card Fight Vanguard deck profile. So if you guys enjoy, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and donate to the Patreon. Now let's get this one started. Today, we have Dragon Empire, Nirvana. Oh, Nirvana from set 3, by the way. Oh, Nirvana from set 3. Oh, I love Nirvana from set 3. Like, I could say everything. We got a really nice grade 1. We have a little combo that I've now decided to just throw Gojo in with because Gojo works in this deck really well. The new Expecta works amazing with this deck, and there's a thing that I've done that I got from another person. So to the person that sees this, Connor, I don't remember what your last name is, so Connor, he's from Top Deck Heroes. If you know who he is, then by all means go shower him with love and stuff like that, because I tested out something from him and it worked out really well, and I agree with it. A lot of people don't, but I say at least try it because it does actually work and it's really fun and it gives you more space. So let's go ahead and get it started and I'll explain what it is later. First up, we have our starter and Trickstar. Now, in set 1, I remember my distinct words being, I will not make this my starter, despite the fact I will never make this my starter, despite the fact I know how consistent it is, because you can just get right on top of it with Rino, while you may not get that draw. I mean, you won't get the draw anyways if you go first. So while you may not get that draw, you're getting a better starter, because later on, when you ride on top of Reiyu with Nirvana, you can Soul Blast the Trickstar, and then boom, you can call that Trickstar back with Nirvana. Well, set 3 has come, and a very certain thing has occurred that has forced me to do this. On any other case, I would not do it, but this is the one time where I'm willing to make that exception, because A, I kind of need the space, and taking out one copy of Trickstar to still have it in deck is kind of worth it to me, honestly, so that's how I'm taking this. So that's our starter for here. If you don't know what Trickstar does, it's a 5k base, 5k shield, grade 0 with boost, continuous rear. It cannot be chosen by opponent's card effects. It just has resist. You can call 3 of them in the back row. They can't be touched, but that's normally not what you use it for. You use it for Overdraft. I mean, unless you're playing against Prison, but I don't do that against Prison. Now, next up is Dragon Deity King of Resurgence, Dragveda, our over trigger, and our first trigger. 50k shield, 5k power, grade 0 boost, over trigger. You may only have one over trigger in your deck. Reveal it as a trigger, remove that card, draw a card, choose one of your events, like this 1 million for the turn. If revealed during your drive check, activates additional effect. Additional effect is choose one of your vanguards and stand it. So, this is the over trigger I've pulled the most of in terms of drive check and damage checks. And nope, that's just the most I've done. Like every other over trigger I have soul charge / milled / drawn to, but Dragveda is the one that's activated at all the most. Like that I've trigger checked at all somehow, which I question. Like not even Hex Orb, which allows you to deck stack, have I done it. The second most belongs to Dark States now, and third most belongs to Keter, but that's just because I spam it with fucking Ultima before the ban list hit. So Dragveda is a really nice overtrigger because it gets you that Vanguard stand, and it gives someone momentum so you can just swing with Valiente, and then expect as a PG block. Now Valiente is a PG block, and now they kind of have to take the Vanguard, and the Vanguard can pump 10 to front row when it attacks, so it's a nice way to get more drive checks, and this overtrigger fits the most with this deck, so I like it a lot. If we could run more, I would. Next up, we have 3 copies of Maiden Zonne as our critical trigger. We run another 4 crits in Burning Flail Dragon, 4k base, 15k shield, grade 0 with boost, auto rear at the end of the battle that it boosted, put it to soul, choose one of your units, and it gets +2 for the turn. Okay, that is more useful in this deck than any of my other decks, except for Magnolia, because this deck does actually need soul cards, and it does run low sometimes. Like, it depends on how the game's going. If you're going the heavy Urger Vairina route where you just use Vairina to start nuking their board, and you use Urger to build up defenses and still a decent amount of power. If you're going that route, then yes, Burning Flail is the card that you want to use because it's going to get you soul. If it wasn't for that, I would probably put Tachigata in here, but like I said, there's a space issue because of all the overdressed cards, because all of them are in here. So that's kind of how I've decided to run it. It's not here for the 2k, I guarantee you that. It's here for that stuff to soul skill and nothing else. So 4 copies of that, 3 copies of Zonne. This is how it always was even before the ban list. I want to let that be clear. I mean, not ban list, before the restriction list, because I don't like running more than 8 crit. There has never been... Yes, there is a deck that I have ran before that had more than 8 crit in it, but it was never in D. It was all the way back in Premium. And when I say Premium, I mean when G was still a thing. Like, long before V had started. I mean, around the time V started, but before it, back when G was the main thing, that's the only deck I had that had more than 8 crits in it. So, and that's mainly because it just bothers me to run more than 8 of a trigger. So 7 crits is the way to go with this. 4 copies of Blaze Maiden Parama, 4k base, 15k shield, grade 0 with boost. Front trigger, continues guard circle. If your opponent's Vanguard's grade 3 good, gets plus 5k shield. 20k shield, you got a lot of power in this deck. They're probably going to be crippled the second you hit the grade 3, depending on what's in your hand. So having that 20k shield is really helpful against their grade 3 Vanguards, and will only not help against things that are big hitters, such as Orphis. Then again, it's never really the Vanguard that hits it big, it's the rear guards. Greedon, though. Greedon, PG it. Don't matter, I don't care what you have to say, PG it. If it's before it gets the 15k, okay, maybe you want to risk it on the triggers, but after that 15k, PG it. I don't want to hear nothing from any of y'all. So 7 crit, 4 fronts are the way to go because, you know, you get the crits. Expecta is already a guard fodder. Valiente is more or less a guard fodder, depending on how you choose to play it. The front trigger makes them both even stronger and makes your remaining attack stronger. The crit triggers add more pressure to your unit that already isn't a pressure unit and gives Expecta more pressure because your opponent has to be a grade 3 for it to go off. So at least it has pressure before then. Same with Valiente. I mean, Valiente doesn't require them to be at grade 3, but it adds more pressure to Valiente's restand. So that's what the triggers are. That's why I choose to run them at what they run at. Next up, we have Blaze Maiden Rona, 5k base, 15k shield, grade 0 with boost, just our heal trigger. Nothing too special about her. I think I saw a Nirvana deck that ran around with heals. That was either a Greedon deck or a Nirvana deck that ran around with no heals. In all honesty, I would consider it. But, like, heals are the thing where I've already made enough, like, compensations for this deck. There's at least one logical decision I'm going to keep here, and that's running the heals. By the way, I forgot to mention, I said before that there was a deck when I was testing out my decks for set 3 that I didn't run PGs in because space reasons. Yep, it was this deck. I did not run PGs when I was test playing, and it was honestly working. I mean, for the early game, it was actually doing really good. Like, it was pushing, and the only times it would die is, like, when the opponent would trigger sack, which, of course, they would, because pulling 2 triggers is apparently really easy for anyone who fights against me. So, if you want to go that route and get more space in it, because it definitely felt more spacious, go that route, because I was able to run Persona Rise because of that. But if you said don't run Persona Rise, I want to let that be clear now, before people start rioting at me. If you want to hear why, wait till I get to Nirvana. And if you don't want to, wait, where was I going with this? All right, yeah, if you want to actually be defensive and have the consistency, go with the PGs. In my opinion, you don't need them, but hey, it works if you want that defensive power. On to our main deck, we run 3 Trickstars. Already went over what his skill does. If you want to know again, go back to the beginning of the video or just pause it and read it here. Trickstar, you need it for your overdresses. All of them, more or less. Okay, Vairina requires it. Valiente requires it to some extent, but it also requires you in the no, it just requires you with the overdress, so technically it doesn't. Urger requires it, Arcs requires it. The only one that doesn't require it is Expecta, but Expecta requires the unit to be in the overdress state, and so more or less requires it. So that's always something to consider. So 3 copies of Trickstar because you do need it, and then the 4th copy is obviously in the ride deck with the rest of the ride line. On to grade 1s, we run 3 copies of Blaze Maiden Mirin, 6k base, 5k shield, grade 1 with boost. Auto, rear, when your unit with the overdress ability attacks, put it to soul, choose one of your units with the overdress ability and gets +5 for the turn. So that's really helpful. They don't have to be in the overdress state, they just have to be with the ability. So if your Vairina that isn't in the state, so it's just a 10k swinger is attacking, you can use this thing's skill, shove it to soul, give it +5 so it's a 15k swinger at least. That's really nice. It gets you soul, which you do need for this deck, especially if you're spamming Urger and Vairina really early. That's what I did, and the deck actually does work with it, so I suggest running it. And it's a way to get more power to your overdress units, making them a lot stronger. 3 of amazing grade 1. Next up, 3 of our new grade 1, who I love with my living soul, and yet every time I use her, I see 5 Vairinas from it, and it's always like 2 of the same one. Each of them I see 3 different ones. 2 of them are at 2 each, and then the other one's at 1. Blaze, and for some reason, I remember on the camera, on the video against Greedon, it was literally 2 Urgers, 2 Arcs, and then 1 of the original. I remember it distinctly. Or maybe it was 1 Valiente instead of the original, but still. Auto, when placed on rear, counterblast 1, look at top side and reveal up to 1 card with overdress from among them, put it to hand and shuffle your deck with an 8k base, 5k shield, grade 1 with boost. So, nice grade 1. She's a booster. She has standard boost ability. It is a counterblast, and that is partially the reason why we have room error in this deck, because this deck has a slight counterblast problem, and I took out Persona Rides to add in a certain countercharger that isn't Urger. I'm pretty sure there is only one other countercharger besides Ethan that isn't a Urger. So if you know what that is, then you should know what's coming next, but we'll get to that later. Point is, Himena's really nice. She gets you overdressed, she gets you your fodder that you need, and she costs nothing more than a counterbox, which can be rectified really easily, especially if you're playing it right. And she looks fucking beautiful. That moon in the background, that banner fluttering in the darkness, the just background in general is amazing, and her outfit, okay, I'm not sexualizing her right now, I want to let that be clear. I like the outfit for different reasons. I just like it because the silk looks very comfortable, it looks very flowing, it looks very movemental. The purple long hair that's just blowing in the wind, oh yes, and the little scatters of flames. Oh, this is my double rare right here. This is perfect, bushy, thank you. I don't even care what the skill is going to be. Honestly, I would run it regardless. I mean, that's debatable, but still. 3 copies. 3 copies of Dragon Monk Gojo, the man who I sacrificed my Persona rights for, and I don't give 2 shits about it because it actually works. AK base, 5k shield, great on with boost, auto rear. When they attack this unit boosted hits a Vanguard, when the attack this unit boosted a Vanguard hits, retire it, countercharge 1. So if it boosted Nirvana, and it's a 21 or maybe 31, because you use Nirvana skill, regardless of what it hits, if it hits something, you countercharge after killing it. Really nice because it opens up your board, so it makes it harder for them to do like locks if you're playing premium, prison if they're just, well, I mean, besides the cards like in prison from drop zone, then it's technically giving them fodder, but you probably have drop zone fodder anyways. It adds on hit pressure to the Vanguard now, so basically your whole front row could be crit pressure. I mean, not crit pressure, but hit pressure, which is really nice, and it gives you counter charge, which the deck desperately needs. I like this grade 1, it's really nice, and it was worth sacrificing the Persona rights for. 3 of. Next up, we have our PG and Twin Buckler Dragon. 6k base, grade 1, boost, 0 shield. Continue Sentinel, be up to 4 Sentinels in your deck. Auto, when it's put on guard circle, choose one of your units, and it cannot be a ton of battle. If your hand has 2 or more cards, choose a card from hand and discard it. So standard PG, nothing too special about it. I mean, it's special about the fact that if it's in your hand and only one other card's in there, when you play down the PG, you don't have to discard anything, which is really helpful. I have played this deck a lot. Like, this is the deck I've played the most in D-Series. I probably hit, like, the hundreds, no, far more than hundreds, probably 500 games by now with just D-Series. Although I'm not even exaggerating right now, I am genuinely telling the truth, which is the funny part about this, because I don't think I've played a deck that much besides Ezreal's, and that's it. So this PG really helps out because I play this deck extremely aggressively and I get my hand very low. Twin Buckler has been there to save my ass on countless occasions, and me getting rid of him, while it gave me room, was not worth it in the end. Run this PG with your life unless you really want that extra space for 4 cards, but in my opinion, you want this PG. And then we have our grade 1 of the ride line, which is Blaze Maiden Rino, 8k base, 5k shield, grade 1 with boost. Auto when it's rode upon by Blaze Maiden Reiyu, the grade 2 of the ride line. Search your deck for up to 1 Trickstar, shuffle your deck, call it to rear, shuffle your deck, and continues Vairina rear during the battle of the attack, it gets plus 2k. So it's a 10k swinger when it attacks, which is unfortunate because unlike the one from Sealed Blaze Maidens where you could just call back from drop, you can't call this from drop. There's literally no way to get this out of drop, so once it gets there, it's gone, and you can't get it out of soul either, so, besides soul blasting it, but then you have to get it back from drop. So, yeah, you're not getting this out of drop. But you run it because it's a free way to get Trickstar. I wish it did more because it bothers me with half that ability being useless, but A, it's still nice, and just like, Himena back here, her clothes look really flowing. I like the flames. It looks really cool. I still like Himena more, especially because of the foiling that I saw with it. But A, this card's still really nice because it gets you that Trickstar, and that's really important to your plays. On to grade 2s. 2 copies of Vairina. Yes, we still run the older Vairina because there are cards that require it to some extent. Like, okay, no one really requires it except for Reiyu, the grade 2 of the ride line, but you still want it because it does so some purpose, and you have some excess souls sometimes, so you want to use those to your full potential. Grade 2, Intercept, 5k shield, 10k base. Overdress on top of Trickstar. You may place it by stacking it on a specified unit instead of normal calling it to rear. Now, that is important. There is a difference between calling a unit in the overdress state and calling a unit with the overdress ability, because in this deck there is an order, and you should know what this is if you've paid any attention to the reveals, that says if you call a unit if it was an overdress, that means it has to be in the overdress state, not if it has the overdress ability. There are cards that require this, so be careful when reading. When you overdress it on top of Trickstar, then it's in the overdress state, and it's counted as an overdressed call. Auto rear, when this unit is in the overdress state, attacks a Vanguard, it gets plus 10, then Soul Blast 2, choose an opponent's rear guard and kill it. So it's a 20k swinger if it attacks Van, and it has the potential to murder a rear guard, and that has always been proven helpful to me. It can kill stuff in the back row, it can kill potential interceptors, murdering 2 units at once. Technically it has to swing into Vanguard for that to go off, but still, it's really nice. I love Vairina for this. 2 of. 2 of Vairina Arcs, my least favorite of the group, because I've hated Arc since the get-go. I liked his draw 2 skill, but I hated that it was an on place, and after that it was fucking useless, because at least this man, even without the soul, he's a 20k swing. This one has no use outside of being placed. 10k base, 5k shield, grade 2 with intercept. overdress on top of Trickstar as well. Auto when it's placed on rear, if it's an overdress, counterblast 1, draw 2, and it gets plus 5 for the turn. So for the turn, it's a 15k swinger with the draw 2. Here's why you run him. He's discard fodder, and he is grade 2 rush fodder. Here's what you do at grade 2. Call Trickstar. If you're anything like me, overdress it with an arcs, counterblast 1, draw 2. You call the Trickstar from Rino, by the way. If you're anything like me, you should have another Trickstar in your hand. Call Trickstar. If you're anything like me, you should have a Vairina in your hand. Overdress it on Vairina. Boom. You have a 20k swinger, you have a 15k swinger, you got a 10k vanguard. You go grade 2 rush, even if they block most of these or like they damage check a trigger, you got a full front row set up for next turn, so then now they have to prioritize murdering your rear guards. And unless they're playing stuff like Prison or what's the other deck thing you do? Prison, Meteors, or a deck that specifies on murdering rear guards, you got a really good front row for next turn. That's why I like this card in this deck in particular, because he does actually do work in an early game. Afterwards, he's kind of meh, especially because he takes up that counterblast, but if you play it right, he won't really mind the counterblast part. So 2 copies. 3 copies of Vairina Ares, my favorite one, because I somehow predicted how he would be like. I mean, in terms of how I wanted the deck to play like, and it somehow worked. 3 copies, grade 2, intercept, 5k shield, 10k base, overdress on top of Trickstar again, so all 3 of our grade 2 ones require Trickstar, unfortunately. Auto hand, at the end of the battle that your Trickstar attacked a Vanguard, if your Vanguard is Chakrabarthi, Divine Dragon, Nirvana, Soul Blast 2, overdress this card on your Trickstar on rear as stand, and countercharge 1. So, pretty much, Trickstar swings. You have no Persona Rise in this deck, so automatically Trickstar is a 5k swinger unless you boost it with something like Himena or Gojo. If you boost it with Gojo, I question why, because Gojo would have to be behind a rear guard and he only works on when boosting a Van, so it's probably boosted by Himena or Mirin, which is fine. If it's boosted by Mirin, it's not going to hit the Vanguard, but at least it's going to hit something. At the end of the battle, you Soul Blast 2, which you should have, you overdress it on top of Ares, you get a counter charge, boom, you got a bigger swinger now. You may have wasted an attack and a booster, but you got a counter charge out of it, which is worth it. And it continues rear and guard circle. If it's in the overdress state, it gets plus 10k power and 10k shield active on both turns too. So it's a 20k swinger with a 15k shield, making this the perfect kill fodder. Expecta, the boy who can just eat up PGs, he's kill fodder. This is kill fodder. Valiente, who can get bigger and bigger by the second, as well as Expeda, is also a kill fodder. So now you have 3 cards that are kill fodders, which means you can just set up an a Arcs or Vairina on the other side, and boom, they got kill fodder, and then you got those 2 to lay waste to the remaining units. Ares, all around, really nice card. Adds for the defensive, adds for the power, adds gives you the counter charge, and acts as fodder. 3 copies. 1 copy of Blaze Maiden Reiyu as our last grade 2 and our grade 2 of the ride line. 10k base, 5k shield, grade 2 with intercept. Auto when it's rode upon by Chakrabarthi, Divine Dragon, Nirvana. Soul Blast 1, switch your deck for 1 Vairina, put it to your hand and shuffle your deck. Unfortunately, it specifies 1 Vairina, which means it has to be this one, because you can't get anyone else, which sucks. But A, it's still good, and I like it because it gets you a free overdress searcher. And it continues to van rear during the battle. The attack gets plus 2, so same as Rino. Not the best, really bad, but it does something on grade 2, I guess, so one of. Onto our grade 3s. First up, we have 2 copies of Vairina Expeta. Yes, I only run 2 copies of this motherfucker because Himena can search him. You are really easy. You're probably going to draw into him via just deck thinning alone. And even if you don't need more than 2 of them. Like, he gets really powerful on his own. You don't need more than 2. 13k base, grade 3 Twin Drive Persona Ride. Overdress it on a unit in the overdress state. So any unit, it can even be itself, but they have to be overdressed onto something, which means probably Trickstar has been at the very bottom of it. Either way, it's kind of weird and restrictive, more restricting than everyone else because they have to be in the overdressed state. Continues rear. This unit gets the original power of all of its original dresses, active on both players' turns, which means, say you overdress it on top of a Vairina, and since they have to be in the overdress state, which means overdress on top of Trickstar, so it's 15 plus 13, 28 on top of 1 Vairina. Interesting. Overdress on top of itself, 41. Overdress on top of Valiente. Well, depending on which Valiente it is, and depending on how many times you overdressed it, a lot stronger. Already, big swinger makes it a lot difficult for the opponent to block, especially when you're going first. Then auto rear. When it attacks a grade 3 or greater Vanguard. Yes, they restricted that to it because if you went first with this, it's already 28 on its own. If you go ham and start overdressing it on top of Valiente's, it's going to get really big, and the only thing that can stop it is PGs, and if they give Nirvana a PG stopper, well, this thing immediately becomes a one-hit kill. If this unit's in the overdress state, counterblast 1, it gets plus 15 a crit. So already, it's a guaranteed 28 followed by more 15 in a crit. So, I mean, at the very least, it's 28, because the lowest it can get is plus 15. So already 28, plus another 15, so 43, double crit, and at the end of the battle, you put all of its original addresses to drop, which means it's no longer in the state. So that sucks, because it's losing out on all of its power, but it's a finisher. This eats PGs. If you know they have a PG, and the only way for you to get rid of it is to do this, do it. If you want to damage star them, do this. This man swings for game or gets rid of important resources. It's an amazing grade 3, and it has purpose beyond everyone's wildest beliefs. I love this grade 3. 2 of. 3 of Vairina Valiente. At first, he was my most hated one next to Arcs. I hated Arcs slightly more. But Valiente has slowly grown on me because he's good. I hated him because of the restand skill. I liked him because of the 5k skill. 13k base, grade 3, 200 Persona Ride, overdress on top of a Trickstar or a grade 3 less unit in the overdress state, so you can overdress on top of himself. It's weird that they specify grade 3 or less, because so far, especially when he came out, there was only grade 3 units that had, at the most, that had overdress. So is that a hint that Esper Ideal or a later one's going to be a grade 4? Is that a hint? If that is, nice job, Bushy. So anyways, his skill, so you can also just overdress him on top of Expecta and vice versa. If you overdress Expecta on top of this, by assumption, it's overdressed on top of Vairina, who's on top of Trickstar by now. Oh, it also has to be in the overdress state. So already it's a plus 15 if you go straight into Expecta, and then plus 13, so 28, 41. Really quick swinger, but still. Anyways, his skill continues. It gets plus 5k for each of your original dresses, so it stacks, but it's not like Expecta where it gets the original power of the units under it. This one just gets power for each. So if you had a Vairina and a Trickstar, it's only plus 10, not plus 15. If you have an if you have a Vairina, a Valiente, and a Trickstar, it only gets plus 15. So that is always something to consider. But Valiente is still really nice, even though he gets low power out of it, and it's still active during both players' turns. And auto rear. Once per turn, when the attack of this unit in the overdress state hits, counterblast 1, discard a card, stand it. So way to get a restand on hit pressure. It does waste a counterblast, but it's fine because you do have 2 counter chargers, and it's a way to get a stand. The discard is meh, especially if you're me, because I keep discarding triggers, but I don't need triggers where I'm going. So Valiente all around is really nice. He adds that his pressure. He's still powerful. Not as powerful as Expecta, but a very good stall card until you get into Expecta. So all around, Valiente is really nice. He's like a 1-2 punch with Expecta over here, where you just stall with Valiente, then Expecta comes in and be like, hey, you thought you've survived this long? Guess what? We're just getting started. Time to die. Punch him straight in the face and punch him right into the wall. 3 copies of Valiente. He's really nice. No. Next up, we have our 1 copy, which goes in the ride deck, of Chakrabarthi Divine Dragon Nirvana. Yes, I don't run Persona rides. Before you all scream at me, let me explain the skill, then I'll explain the reason why. Grade 3, 200, Persona Ride, 13k base. Active and once per turn, discard a card from hand, choose a grade 0 card from your drop, call to rear. Okay, if you play like I did in set 1, you're calling triggers down. And that honestly could work, because you just keep looping this. You could just have this on board, honestly. The second they give us someone that can bounce stuff back to deck, you call this. Or just bounce stuff in general, you call your triggers. But normally you call Trickstar from this just so you can keep overdressing your stuff. And the other skill is Auto Van. When it attacks, counterblast 1 in this unit and all of your units with the overdress ability get plus 10. So basically, your front row gets plus 10 because you're probably going to have all front row units with overdress state. That's the only important reason about Nirvana. At this point, you kind of run him more for that skill than you run him for the Trickstar skill, at least from what I've seen, because I barely use that skill nowadays, because I always either draw into my Trickstar, or I played them wise enough to where I don't need that skill. So that's always very funny, because first set, I felt like you ran it for that skill in the both skills. Second set, felt like you ran it more for the discard skill, and then now it feels like you more run it for the power skill. Now, here's why I run it at 1. It is because it is a power skill. Quite literally, the Persona Ride, plus 10 to front row and draw. While that is helpful, think about it. Expecta, who you're probably going to be ramming with most of the time, has a lot of power. You don't need more than that. Like, you don't need the 10k. It's not going to make a difference. Valiant, well, I mean, it will, but they're probably going to PG it anyways. Valiente, same situation. Not going to make that much of a difference. There's no reason to run it, especially when this deck is so constructed on space that you kind of need more cards, especially stuff that countercharges like Gojo. Because I tell you, when I played this deck before I started shoving Gojo and I played it with the Persona Rides, yeah, I got more power, but I could do less plays because I had less counterblast to work with. So, adding Gojo into the mix really helped, and I had to sacrifice my Persona Rides, but I still hit pretty big numbers and at more consistent timing. So, I like the way I did with this deck. You don't need Persona Rides for it, and I cannot take credit for this. It belongs to Connor from Top Deck Heroes, so go check out Go check out Top Deck's Heroes and say congratulations to Connor for figuring this out. It's really interesting. If you don't want to do it because you don't want to give up your big, massive power swingers, go ahead. But I feel like this gives you more room and more, I guess, capabilities with your deck because it's not all about power. It is about consistency sometimes. And now we have our last card, which is our Grade 3 Normal Order Prayer of Resonating Wishes, the card I want to play so badly, but I always draw into it, but have to use it as discard fodder because I don't have shield and I need it as PG fodder or I need it as ride deck fodder. But one day I will play it because it looks really cool. Play it by counterblasting 1, choose one of your vanguards, and until end of turn, it gets auto van. When your rear guard is placed, if it is an overdress, which means it has to be in the overdress state when you place it, so same with arcs. Draw a card and this unit gets +5 for the turn. So basically, if you overdress, if you go ham with your Valientes and expect to, let's just say you overdress 3 times at once per column somehow, you're drawing a total of 6 cards and +30 to van. And that is possible because you're drawing each time you overdress, so it is something to consider. I mean, you have to draw in specific orders for this to go off, but hey, Nirvana with this order works out really well. Gets the vanguard to big numbers. Nirvana pumps up the rear guards, and the rear guard's already big enough. 2 copies of this order, really nice. And that was the deck. I hope you guys enjoyed. I think this is my longest deck profile. This deck is really fun playing. In all honesty, when I first started Overdress, I was not so sure what deck I was going to make, and I thought I'd make Eugene. Turns out that's not the case. I was right about the nation, wrong about the deck. Nirvana, who ended up maining. This deck goes fun. It's really nice playing with. It hits really big. It is almost hard to stop. It's almost impossible to stop. Not almost hard. It's really hard to stop. And all around, I like it. It's fun to play with. It's one of my favorite decks. It is my favorite deck in D series, actually. So I hope you guys enjoy. Don't forget to like if you like the deck. Comment, just to hear your opinions on it, because I really like hearing the opinions of all of the people who watch this. Sub if you want to see more of these. Hit the bell notification so you can see it when these videos pop up. Go check out the new channel called Crossfight. I think it's called. I'm not so sure. Where the people from there have made a new channel to fight YouTubers online. More on that as it develops. I have no idea why we're doing that. I have no idea how this is going to go. We literally started this before I started this recording, like 5 minutes before I started this. So I don't know the full details. So go check out that. I'll link in the description when I get the chance. And I'll see you all in the next one. Don't forget to stand up your vanguards.